Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Healing Conversations. My name is Zainab Avni. I'm an alignment coach and energy healer. And this podcast, Healing Conversations for Anything Chronic, is really a podcast for chronic pain and really wanting to bring the message of alternative healing hope. With me today, Stephen Blake. Stephen, so lovely to have you here.
It's lovely to be here. Thank you for the opportunity.
Wonderful. So let's get started by me sharing with everyone a little bit about you. So here we are. So Stephen is the creator of Old Pain to Go, a method of dramatic reduction in chronic pain or the complete removal of it. Old Pain to Go utilizes the concept of brain bargaining, which is at the heart of therapy work. Stephen has had great interest in hypnotherapy since he was 7, and at the age of 70 has had 12 years of hypnotherapist and NLP master practitioner. His main skill is in taking really complex subjects and explaining them simply. As a child, he took all his toys to bits to understand how they worked. He carries to this day the same childish enthusiasm and inquisitiveness to learn every day about life and how the mind operates. That is super wonderful. Stephen, it's really lovely to have you here. And I'm really excited to hear all about Old Pain to Go and what got you started and anything, anywhere you want to start. Take it away.
Okay, so I've been pain free for 12 years now. And so I was training to be a therapist, hypnotherapy and NLP. And they taught us a technique called end step. And it wasn't about pain, it was about anything really. And it was a technique that I could see faults in it even while they were teaching me it. And it was the idea that if you had any symptom that you could replace it with 3 smaller, less annoying symptoms. And that just didn't strike a chord with me. That was like, why would you do that? If somebody bought you a present you didn't like, you wouldn't say, "What, can you take it back and buy me 3 slightly less annoying presents?" So it just didn't ring a bell. So I adapted it when I did it. And I did it on myself. There was 40 of us stood up to be directed through it. And I went through my adapted one, and my pain went away. And I'd been in pain since I was 8 years old, and I was 58 at the time. So to me, it was like a miracle. And a few other people had used it to stop smoking and things. And straight afterwards, there was like, "Oh, I don't feel like smoking anymore." But by the next day, I was the only one still talking about it working. Everybody else had, their things had come back. And so on the understanding that I'd adapted it and it had worked, and it didn't seem to work when it wasn't adapted, I carried on working on it. So I've been working on it for 12 years. And originally I was, as a therapist, I helped people with anxiety. And I helped them in one session, which, I don't mean an hour. I'd fetch them in at 10 o'clock in the morning and work on them until they got better. And that literally, it was my promise that I would work on you. And if it didn't go away, I'd keep working on you for free, which was a crazy, I now recognize it's a crazy thing to do, but it made me get good very quickly. Because I had to be, or I was going to work for free for the rest of my life. And so I was getting great successes with that. And I had this sort of party trick of turning pain off. I never thought of offering it to anybody. And I would literally, at parties and things, see people in pain and say, "Are you in pain? And have you got 10 minutes spare?" And I'd chat to them and the pain would go away. And then I got as brazen as actually stopping people in the street and saying, usually people on crutches and things. And I'd say, "Are you in pain?" And they go, "Yeah." And I go, "Have you got a few minutes?" And one lady I met sort of left carrying her crutches, shouting, "Yippee, I'm going to cancel my operation." And because she'd been in a car crash and they couldn't find out the pain. So they just kept doing things to find it. And the pain went. So, and 7 years ago, I read something or watched something that had this in it, and it said that the neural pathways for physical and emotional pain were the same neural pathways. And it might not mean a lot to most people, but to me, it blew my mind. It was like, everything I've learned about anxiety, I can map across to the physical pain. And everything from the physical pain, I can map across to the anxiety. So I got better at both things immediately. And within a few, within days, literally, I set up pain clinics. And I ran a few of those, and the doctors locally didn't want to know. And so I just wrote an advert and said, you want to come along to this pain clinic? It's free of charge. You're going to be in a group for about an hour and a half. And the first one was 9 people attended. Three were on crutches. 5 out of the 9 left totally pain-free, and the other 4 with a massive reduction in pain. And one of those was the partner of somebody who didn't come along to have his pain removed and said I couldn't help him. And he left without any pain. And each time I did it, I got more and more people out of pain compared with who left with some pain. But it's usually a dramatic reduction in pain. So I worked from that, and within 7 weeks of reading that thing, I I started training people how to do it. And that was 7 years ago last week. So, and now I've trained over 1,600 people. In fact, I've now trained my 1,700th person, or one of my trainers did this week. So it's gone really well. And the target audience initially was mainly hypnotherapists, because they would have an insight into how the mind works to deal with pain. And but then I've taught doctors and physiotherapists and nurses, and even 2 neurologists. So it's sort of expanded out into this thing, and I've had to keep on top of it all the time too, because I'm training more and more professional people, and I wanted to make sure that everything I do is right. It's it is what I say it is.
Yes, and I'm excited. I obviously trained with you last week as well, and already put it to the test and had some really nice pain reductions with the people I worked with. So I'm
Brilliant.
very excited to continue. Yes, absolutely. Sorry, you were asking something?
No, I'm just thinking that it's this weirdest of things, because it sounds miraculous, but it is based on logic. And even something that looks miraculous, you can work out why it worked. And so, and for quite some years, a lot of people sort of tried to abuse me and things, and it was like, how dare you, and pain's necessary and all that. And I'm going to explain why it isn't, why chronic pain isn't. So I've had to get better at telling the story, because I think I was frightening people off. And I got quite a bit of stick about it, and it's sort of like, well, if it was that clever, somebody cleverer than you would have thought about it by now. And there were quite a few pioneers, and Dr. John Sarno did some great work. But that was quite some time ago, and he didn't have the benefit of understanding brain imaging and all that I've read up on. But in the main, I've thought of this as a sort of logical thing to do. And really, I've studied the science afterwards. And initially, when I was doing it, there wasn't the science to back this up. And now the science is there. And now I can't understand why the scientists who have proved every element of what I do haven't come out with the same answer. So I'm still blown away with sort of like, why aren't people catching on to this? And why is it so simple? And I think it's so simple. And why hasn't it been done for the last 2,000 years? What? And I think it's just my curiosity and my inability to accept people's answers. And when I was told I'd be in pain for the rest of my life, I accepted it. And then when I wasn't, it was like, how dare they? How dare they trap people in pain for the rest of their lives?
Yeah.
And that's the fight I've been having since, really.
And this is such a wonderful question, actually, because people, yes, it's the white coat syndrome, right? People are told what they've been diagnosed with something and they believe it, and if it has a gloomy prediction of incurable pain or illnesses, then they follow that. And this is, with this podcast, I am I really feel that I am part of that movement to bring that message of alternative healing and hope, because at least try it, at least try something else. Don't just go so blindly with what the doctors say.
I think the problem is that first of all, if you're told that it won't get better. So I was told that at the age of 38, I was told I had ankylosing spondylitis and arthritis of the spine, and it would get worse and worse and worse until I died. And one of the doctors in the same practice told me everybody has backache because we're not designed to be upright. So, I mean, they were damning things that trapped me in pain for another 20 years. And it's only because I found my own way out of it that I suddenly realised we're not being lied to. We're just people don't know this.
Yeah.
And currently, most doctors still don't understand that pain is made in the brain, not in the part of you that hurts. And that's a fundamental issue of with doctors. Why don't you know that simple thing now that's been known for at least 10 years? So that's the problem with it, is that we've got an audience of people out there who we could help, but A, they don't know anything like this exists. B, they would be wary of it because what they've been told by their doctors, and their doctors are far more skilled than I am. I've got no medical training, and yet some of the things I do, doctors can tell you why it would never work. And then I see it happen. And so it's just fascinating to me that that I take on people when the doctors have given up.
Yeah.
Really clever people have given up on them, and then I deal with it.
So what is it that how do you get the conversation started?
Well, obviously I'm better known now, but initially when I did it, I was literally, talking to people and saying, "Are you in pain?" And then, "Have you got 10 minutes?" And I do a very similar thing now. That there's something quite magical about this, that I attend things like mind, body, spirit fairs, which aren't exactly the right place for me to go, but I don't know of anywhere better, because people are coming along expecting to have open-minded, because there's also crystal therapy and all sorts of different things there. So I go to those events, and people look at my stand, and because it's quite professional and everybody else, has a bit of cloth on a table and there's unicorns there and things like that. When they look at my stand, I think it's a bit too professional, and they sort of look away quick. But if they walk around often enough, eventually they might catch my eye, and I go, "Do you have any pain?" And they go, "Oh, I've got so much pain." And I say, "Well, do you want to chat for a few minutes? Because we don't charge anything for our services while we're here." And I deliberately chose that because at these events, it's like a market stall. You wouldn't go and buy, a Gucci bag from a market stall. So I'm just there explaining what we do. And we get the stall cheaper because we don't give or we don't give paid for treatments. So I'll chat to somebody for 10 minutes, and then I'll say, "Do you know what? If you spent another 5 minutes with me, we could get you free of this. It's free of charge. Would you like me to have a go?" And they go, "Yeah," usually. And if they say no, of course, I send them on the way, because what's the point? But they say yes, and I sit them down, and within 10, 15, 20 minutes, they're out of pain. So which is it's lovely for me, because I see that, I get the practice in, and they go away now understanding that this is an availability. And quite a few who I've got out of pain actually come back and train with me. So it's not a thing I do and it's just generous and it never gives me anything back. But it does make people aware that this is out there, and then other people walking past see it. So instead of ignoring my stand and going, "Oh, that looks a bit, I don't know about that. That looks expensive," other people see it, and I also get to give talks at these events, so I'm able to explain why it works and how it works, which I obviously need to do with you now, don't I?
Yes, that would be wonderful.
So, what it is, the idea I've based it on is that when you have pain, ordinary pain, when you just hurt yourself, it's like an alarm bell goes off. Now, most people don't realize, but pain is made in the brain. It's a calculation of an alarm signal to give you, to get you to take action. Now, we'll move past the initial thing of touching something hot or sharp, because there's a slightly different reaction that we get, this natural knee-jerk reaction to move us away from it. But when we look at the damage that's done, we then got acute pain, and it's not just a measure of damage that gives us the pain. It's actually all the receptors that are sending the message that they're damaged. They're not pain receptors. Now, this is the interesting thing. They're called nociceptors, which means hurt. So they're measuring the damage, or how much it should, or how much hurt we need, or how much it's hurt us. So it's not a pain receptor. So those signals go up to the brain, along with what you're looking at and your memory bank and everything else, how you feel that day, who's caused it. Everything else gets mixed in with this, and then the brain makes a decision to give you a level of pain to get you to take the right sort of action. So if you've got a small cut, it'll give you a level of pain where you go, oh, I've got a bit of a cut there now. Oh, it's a little bit wide, so I better put a Lastipast on it, and then it'll get better. But if it was a massive cut, or the end of your finger's missing, it will give you a massive amount of pain to make you go to the emergency room. And then, of course, there's a band of levels of pain in between that. But if we see it as an alarm system in a building, if the fire alarm goes off in a public building, it only has one volume, and it's get out or you die. That's the message. Mm-hmm. And it gives you that. And we're trained to hear this bell, and the bell has to be deliberately annoying. If it was pleasurable, we'd sit there going, oh, that's nice. I think I'll record that and take it home with me. But we have this annoying thing that makes us go outside the building, which saves our life. And so pain's very similar. It's an alarm bell going off. The only purpose of pain is to get you to take action. Now, your brain could say, take action. But it doesn't. It uses this sort of like metaphor. It gives you this pain that then makes you think what action you take, because the brain doesn't like controlling you except in life or death emergencies, when it will take over. So it sort of gives you this hint, you got a bad back, you fell off a horse. I don't think you should ride a horse again. So if it's uncomfortable, you probably won't ride. Therefore, I haven't stopped you riding. You've chosen to stop, and you can't blame me for it. Yeah. So it gives you this annoying noise. Now, that's all right in the first 12 weeks. It gets you to go to the doctors. Usually by the time you've been to the doctors and you've had some treatment and it starts healing, it's also the pain either goes right down or it goes away. So it doesn't wait until the end of the 12 weeks and then go, I'm healed now, you can have pain. Because if it kept you in pain during those 12 weeks, it wouldn't be able to tell you if it wasn't healing. And most people have never thought of that angle. So it's got to turn the pain down as soon as it's healing, so that when it stops healing or it gets an infection there or the bone's not in the right place, it can say, hey, something wrong here. But how could you hear that if it's already at full volume? Mm-hmm. So pain usually goes away before the 12 weeks. Now, the work I do, because I'm not medically trained, I don't diagnose. I don't want to know what's sort of happening with the person and then say, oh, I think it's this. I want somebody when the doctor's given up on them and says nothing can be done. And because I only talk with people, I can't do any damage. I'm not physically manipulating them and I push it past the point where it's dangerous. And so we've got this thing that the brain is carried on with the pain. Now, if the brain is carried on with the pain, it becomes like this. Imagine you go to a library and you've got to go in there, and you get there and the alarm bell's ringing. And you stand outside thinking, but I've got to go in. But the alarm bell's ringing, so there must be a fire. So, and you look in and everybody's just looking at the books and things. And so you walk to the door, and now you get all uptight, wouldn't you? You'd be like, oh, I'm in danger. This is all chronic pain is. You carry on in this, oh, I'm in danger, and you go inside and the librarian says, can I help? And you go, shouldn't you be outside? Oh, no, don't worry. We had a fire 5 years ago. The bell's stuck. And you would say, well, why don't you have the bell turned off then? Because you're not worried about the fire, you're worried about the bell.
Mm.
So it's the bell that originally was warning you there's a problem. The bell is now the problem. And not only is the bell the problem, but it stops you realizing if there is a fire because it's already running. Yeah. So now you're in there and you have to get used to the idea that you might be safe, but you don't feel it. And chronic pain is this continuation of not feeling safe. So usually what we're looking for is a story behind why somebody's holding on to pain. Now, because people don't realize you can get free of it, they don't realize they have a story as well. So it can be quite traumatic that when they, there might have been a car accident and their best friend died and they were driving. And then they have this sort of guilt thing that, well, I can put up with this pain because my best friend died and it was my fault and I deserve this. And if you think you deserve it, then your brain takes that into consideration and continues the pain. But it can be trivial things as well. It can be that you're feeling stupid about something you did. And whilst you feel stupid about it and you don't want to tell anybody else, you keep the story. I had a very recent example of that with a woman who was in her 80s. She was 82, actually. And she stood on a tractor when she was 61 and then fell off it. And it was like, I should have known better at 61. And I told her a story about a woman who fell off a bed when she was 8 years old and had pain for 30 years in her hip. And once she got the story and recognized it was very similar to hers, and isn't it great that you feel childish enough to climb on a tractor at 61? But it shook your safety. It shook it made you realize that you were 61. And you've had it for 20 years. And are you willing to let go? And she went, yeah, and it went. So it's this thing of, I talk with people, and even if I can't extract the story, I usually can, but even if I can't extract the story, I can say, well, look, you've had this pain 20, 30 years or whatever. Do you think you suffered enough? Do you want a bit more? Do you want to continue in pain? Would it be helpful for you to continue in pain? And of course they say, no, of course it isn't. Do you want to be free of pain? Yes. Well, I want your unconscious to let go of that story, whatever it is. We couldn't find it, but whatever it is, it must be quite significant if it won't let you see what the story is. So let it go anyway. And they agree to it and it goes. So this is my work, and it's quite joyous to have somebody in front of you who's in pain, and then literally you can see it go, because pain, although pain is a very real thing, it's a very real sensation, you can't open. Quite often people have surgery where they go, let's look for the pain. Well, it's not in there. It's a message sent down from the brain. You're never going to find this thing called pain in there, because pain is a message, and it's a message to take action. So the whole purpose of how I came to this was, if you're being told a message of move or do something or don't do something, and it doesn't tell you that very well, and there's no action you can take, and you never can with chronic pain, what's the point in having a message about take some action every day when you can't take action? And chronic pain increases over the years, and it increases not because you get better neural pathways and all that. That's a sort of an explanation of why your pathways have got bigger and all that. But the reality is, if you got some part of you telling you to do something, to take some action, and you don't, it will get louder. And that's all it is. It turns the bell, it turns the alarm up a bit more, and it goes, you're not listening. And if you take medication, it says, but I need you to have this pain at this level. I've decided that's the clever level for you. That's the optimum level. It's the minimum it will take to get you to take action. And of course, when you're not taking action, it goes, well, you probably need a bit more then. And when you take drugs, you lower that level. So now it says, well, you're never going to take action if it's lowered. So I better turn it up at source so it comes back up to the level I intended it at.
Mm.
So you can't medicate this away. It's not a good idea. And with chronic pain, you're going to be on medication for the rest of your life, which is a really bad idea. And you can't medicate your way. You can't exercise out of it because you're pushing through a pain barrier, and the brain in your head, you're thinking, but I must be doing some damage if I'm moving to a part of me that hurts. And we don't like being in pain. So when we move through something that's painful, we tense up so as not to get to the point where it hurts.
Mm.
So we get this cycle of tension and inflammation and pain, and it just keeps going, and it just keeps getting worse and worse and worse, and the level keeps going up. And my idea is, because we know that, we can talk to you in a way that it starts going down. It goes the opposite way. And it means that in most methods I've studied now, they have this cycle of sort of like, well, now you've got the pain and now you've been in it for a long time. You've got depression now. Your movement's restricted. Let's get rid of all these things first, and then we'll deal with the pain. And my idea was, well, that's the slow way. If you get rid of the pain first, using old pain to go or anything that's similar, and there isn't many things that are similar. If you get rid of the pain first and you haven't got any pain, now you can exercise because you're not pushing through a pain barrier. It's not difficult to do anymore. Now, if you start walking normally, you're not worried that you're damaging yourself. And if you're not worried that you're damaging yourself, if you do get pain, you'll realize that you're doing too much too soon. But it'll come with a slight level of pain where you go, oh, I'm pushing myself a bit too much now.
Mm.
Just as any ordinary human would be that hasn't been in pain. You know, if I do something now and it starts to hurt, I go, well, I probably won't do that tomorrow. Or I'll probably do less than that next time I do it. So it's just really getting you back to normal, getting the system reset so you're not constantly in this danger. And this is why it fits in so nicely with the work I did with anxiety and so on, because it's so similar. If you think about anxiety, it's an alarm that's gone off from something that happened years ago, and it still runs as though there's a problem now. And it gets you all uptight and everything else. So they're so similar.
Mm.
And so this isn't saying that pain isn't real or that it's in your head. Pain is absolutely real, and it's in your brain. And it's calculated for you. Yeah, so it's nobody is making this stuff up. It helps. It's helpful to you quite often. That's why there's pain there. It's getting you to take the right actions. With things like fibromyalgia and issues like that, and chronic fatigue, it's because you're overdoing things all the time and you're not listening to it when it gave you pain and fatigue. So it just keeps turning the volume up until it makes it really difficult for you to do anything. But then you fret about what you're not doing. And it can't stop that. So it doesn't know what to do for you.
Mm.
And once you recognize that it's actually your actions that have repercussions, so your body's not punishing you, it's trying to stop you from dying, from being stressed all the time, and it's trying to sort of make you aware of it. But it goes the way it goes about it, it just adds to your stress. So I found a way to deal with that. And just by getting people to recognize that their actions are causing the problem, if you stop those actions, then you can get rid of it. And then the slight balance between the fact that, well, they are a driven person, so we can't ask them to slow down and that because that's not in their nature, but we can get them to see what level of activity is okay and sensible, and their life would be good if they did that level of activity. And that if they do more than that, then they're just setting themselves back up again to have pain and fatigue.
Mm.
And that works incredibly well.
So a lot of people, even people I spoke with, they feel their pain. They know they're in pain. And then when we come to them and we say, things like that, like actually, the pain comes from the brain. It's kind of, looking for the story, looking for what is that actually, what was going on. People don't consciously know to recognize that there is a story, that there is a reason for why all of this started. They really look at the pain at face value. This is how I'm feeling, and therefore, this is
Yes.
it.
Yeah.
And a lot of the people will say, oh, this might work on other people, but it's not going to work on me.
It's this thing of I mean, I obviously have done this thousands of times now. So
Mm,
when I phone somebody up and I say, so would you like to be free of pain? And there's a hesitation, I ask them about hesitation. I say, do you really want this? And they say, oh yes, I really want this, but I can't believe that it can work for me. And
mm,
I say, well, leave that to me. I've got enough belief for the both of us. You don't have to believe this,
yeah.
but do you want to be free of the pain? As long as they want to be free of the pain, then they've got nothing to lose by chatting to us. So when they're chatting to us, and I used to be in sales, and sales isn't quite what people think it is. I've never forced anybody to buy anything. So the proper thing about sales is that you guide somebody to the solution to the problem that they've got. And if you are not the possessor of the solution, then you tell them where to go to get a solution that's better than the one you have that's not going to work for them. So I've got this ability to talk with people, to take them from a situation where they are to where they want to be. I'm not forcing them to get better or to be free of pain. As long as they want to come along with me, then they'll listen to me. And if they listen to me, then I'll be quite persuasive in the fact that here it is, this is why it is. I tell lots of people stories of other people I've helped, which is not just me showing off or anything. It's just saying people in similar circumstances got better and they're no different to you.
Mm.
So there's some wonderful things. I try and hold back on the more miraculous stories because then people go, oh, he must be lying if it's that. But it's quite a natural thing for the brain to get stuck in this loop. And so when I teach it, I say, why don't we call it a pain review session? Where all we're doing is it's almost like we tap on the head and we say, hey, brain, you're running that pain signal. Yeah. Well, they don't like it. And I can't see any advantage in them having it. So here's a few things to think about. If you keep running that pain, how are they going to notice new pain in that area? And it goes, oh, I hadn't thought of that. And then if we get the story as well, we can say, and this is why you've kept running it, because she did this. She bounced up and down on the bed when she was 8. She fell off, hurt herself, didn't want to tell anybody. So she's kept the pain until now. But she doesn't want it anymore. Are you willing to let go? And the unconscious, most of the time, says yes. And so when I had to sort of prove that this worked, initially it was just, I had all these anecdotes. And then one day when we was having a sort of bit of a clear up, we found 216 feedback forms. We found them over a period of months, actually, because they're in different cupboards and things. And we found these 216 feedback forms. By the time I put them all together, I analysed them. And it showed that on average, 94% of the pain went away. Now, that's an incredible figure. And it's even more incredible when you understand that I did about 109 of these people, and the others were worked on by somebody who trained that day, literally usually 10 minutes before. Because I'd finish off the training, I'd say, got to stop now because there's people knocking on the door. They're coming in and you're going to work on them. And so we'd have a quick tea break and then they'd work on somebody. So if you understand that that's not just me with the sort of like knowledge, experience, and a little bit of authority because people go, oh, he's the guy that invented it. But if you look at it like, well, half of them were being worked on by somebody who literally had a script there and shook it while they read it out, and it still worked. And then more recently, I didn't know what proportion of these I'd done, but when I found out it was like 50-50, I suddenly thought, well, let's extract mine out of it and check it against the newbies. Let's see how much better I am than the newbies. 6%. I am only 6% better than somebody on average, than somebody I've just trained, which proves that it works.
Yeah.
And 77% of the people that in this 216 people got fully better, fully 100% of the pain went. And the other 23%, it reduced by 76% the pain.
Yeah.
So these are massive figures that, it's not a scientific study. I didn't, set people out and they didn't have to pass tests and criteria. And it wasn't just back pain. It was fibromyalgia. It was all sorts of different things.
Yeah.
And one of them in there wasn't even old pain. Because I think somebody there who just had they'd had a tattoo the day before, and they said, "Can you do anything for this?" And it's like, well, it's over and done with now, so you don't need the pain. So it's old pain as far as I'm concerned, and the pain went away.
Yeah.
So it's lovely, and it's just the most fascinating work to do.
When I was after the training, because we did this walk on us, and I went away. There was 80% reduction, and then afterwards, I felt a little bit of pain, and I said to myself, my brain knows. It knows exactly when to let it go. And I just said that to myself a few times, really separating myself from the pain. And the next day, it was completely gone.
Yeah,
and that was really nice.
It's brilliant. Now, just to put that into context, on the day, I think about 10 people, weren't there?
Yeah.
So on the day, I do this thing where I take people through a group session of it. So it's obviously not as effective as a one-on-one where I find the story out and all that. And in fact, I think I found everybody's stories in about 10 minutes. So I always say, look, this isn't going to be as effective as having a one-on-one, but you are part of the group now. And if you go in the group and there's pain comes back, or it's we sort of anticipate that for some people that it will, because we didn't spend the time with you to make sure it went and get the story and everything else. But when we get the story and everything, I mean, I've seen people years later and they're still doing fine. The one exception is that occasionally somebody who's had fibro will go back to overdoing things again. So I meet them and I say, "How you doing?" They go, "I did all right for the first 4 years, but I've started my own business up now." And I'm working 12 hours a day and I'm feeling a few aches and pains. And I go, "What did I tell you?" And they go, "Okay, Stephen." And then the next time I see them, they go, "I'm fine again now." So,
and what about when people go home and are having suffered for years and years and years, and they go home and the partner says, "Really?"
we do have to warn people about that, because we can talk them out of pain, and it should be then permanent, because there's a bit of an aha moment where they go, "Hey, I am in charge of this." Now, if they've got somebody absolutely dominant in their life, and there is a story, probably a bit too long to tell, but somebody who came to one of my students, and she had a dominant friend who said, "Go there," because when she went to one of my students, she did Reiki on her, and so she felt a bit better. So she sends her, but she's now trained in old pain to go. So when a young friend, a smaller friend goes there, she gets completely free of pain. Of course, she won't believe it. So, and she's so powerful, this woman, that she talks her back into having the pain again, because, well, that woman can't get rid of pain because she didn't do it for me. And that's no different to when you go on a diet and somebody who can't diet gives you a cream bun, because it's like, I'm fat and it can't be that easy, or else I'd be slim as well. So have a cream bun. But that's a very rare case. And it needs to be somebody who's so dominant in your life that you're away from our influence of, "You're in charge, you can do this," to, "Oh, I'm not in charge, my best friend's in charge of me, or my husband, or whatever." It's a possible thing. So it's just a strange one for me, because I'd love to say to people, "Okay, you go out and tell everybody you was in pain for 20 years and now you got better, and give them my card and here you are. I'd love to say that, but I don't. And that's the reason, is because if as they started doing that, a lot of people would say, you can't be free of pain. Pain doesn't go away just because somebody talks to you. So this is what we're always battling, is this perception from everybody that because really clever people like doctors and surgeons say, oh, we don't know why you've got the pain, it'll never go, it'll increase over the years, you've got this problem, so therefore you need the pain. We're fighting that all the time. And so I have to be a bit of a maverick to go, no, that's rubbish.
But this is it's really interesting, because people who suffer for so many years, and we got a comment, I will read it in a second. It's when they get pain free in a day, or in a short period of time, they have to emotionally, mentally catch up with that, because it's that feeling of loss of what happened with my life, that I had to wait such a long time.
It's sort of joy and disappointment. The 82-year-old woman this week was like, why didn't I meet you 20 years ago when it started? And I went, I didn't do this 20 years ago. so you couldn't have done it. So it is that we have to, it's called a sunk cost, something that's happened for years, or you put money into something and then you lose it. You can't for the rest of your life go, oh, I put some money in that thing and I lost it and I'll be this much better off now. You just have to say, that's the past. I'm better now. And so I build people up at the end of a session to sort of like see the joy in life and understand now that they're in charge of their own body and everything else. Now, unless it's something, obviously, if you injure yourself or you're in a car crash or something, you're going to have pain because that's the acute pain.
Yeah.
But you don't need it after it's been acute. Once it becomes chronic again, you're in charge of it. And you determine whether you're going to keep this pain or you're not. It's done its purpose. It's the alarm rang. You did what you needed to do, but it's sort of holding on to the memory of it, or it holds on to a weakness. I had a bad back from 8 when I caused it, lifting barrows of concrete from my dad while we were doing some work. And I sort of kept it, and I didn't realise there was a story to mine. So it was even years after I'd got better that I realised the story was that because I used to be a plumber and a builder, and I started, and I've always been this sort of nice guy, people pleaser type thing. I didn't realise that that's why I did that, but I found that out. And I would do work for all my relatives, but because I could do joinery and electrical and plumbing and bricklaying and plastering, I was working not only on my own houses that I renovated, but all my relatives' houses for free. So I didn't get to see my kids and things. And I didn't get to go out at weekends. And somebody would say, can you come and give me a hand with this? But they would go out for the weekend with their kids, and I'd be in their house slaving away for nothing. And I realised that when I had a bad back, I had a reason to say, I'd love to help you, but I'm not up to that anymore. I can't do that sort of work anymore. So it was, my body was helping me say no to things, because if I'd been fit and well, I didn't have a reason to say no, and I thought I'd offend them.
Yeah.
So your body's just being helpful to you, and it gives you and this is the thing, pain is not a punishment. It's not a punishment for you. It's you've done some damage there. Don't do that again. Yeah. And if you can remember not to do it again, I don't need to give you pain every day to remind you what you did that hurt you. Yeah. You could just remember that you did that stupid
in that.
If you promise not to do it again, it doesn't come back.
Yeah. Let me read this comment. I think I'm showing it now on the screen. So it says, unfortunately, the triggers I get comes from my childhood trauma, and I am fully aware of it when it comes, but it doesn't cause me to feel depressed, and it creates fear. Yes, it does manifest into physical pain as well. It's not easy to control feeling of abandonment when your own children bring them about by leaving the country we live in to go and settle somewhere else. I go right back to my own childhood when my brothers and I was sent to an orphanage from the age of 7 for 2 years. I blocked a. I don't know if I
I've
can.
got enough of the gist of that anyway to answer
Yeah.
it. So thank you for sharing that with us. Now, therapy is a lot better than it used to be. For an issue like that, for you to go to therapy would have took years. Now, you mentioned depression in there. Now, depression is a difficult thing to get rid of. Anxiety, a lot less so. And that's why I help people out of it in one session. I did eventually get somebody who I had this thought one day, I never get anybody with depression. And I got 2 in 1 week. And it's a lot more difficult to deal with because it's a way of thinking. It's sort of, it's like the survival instinct, and you have to be wary of everybody because then you're more likely to survive. But if you went to see a good therapist, and pick one that does say they can do this quickly, because there's no difference between taking 2 years to do it and taking a few hours to do it. If you get somebody who can help you through that, what it does, it turns that alarm bell off. It's the same as physical pain. You've got this alarm bell ringing all the time that you're not safe. You know, I could cry for you. I mean, it literally is this terrible thing that happened to you when you were younger. But now it's screwing up the rest of your life. And so what needs to go is that happened. We can't take that away. But if we take or help you take away the emotion from it, then you can deal with life. And life just gets better then, because you're looking at the reality of life then. And, you know, there are some horrible people out there, but there's lots of wonderful things out there. There's lots of nature itself is beautiful and wondrous, and if we start seeing what's good in life as well, we get this balance back in. But at the moment, you're trapped in that trauma that you went through. But it's not happening now. So every bit of depression or anxiety or whatever is not about now. It's about the past. And sometimes you just have to say that's over and done with, and I need to move on. Now, I know you say you're trapped with the emotional pain of it, but that's what a good therapist will help you do, is get over that. And there's quite a few techniques that don't involve reliving it. So a lot of the eye accessing techniques, things like EIMT, the blast technique by Nick Davis, there's quite a lot of things out there now that takes the trauma away without having to relive it and go back and deal with all those problems. So please, if you do commit to doing that, it will change your life. Now, I'm not saying everything goes away, but if you can get rid of that background sensation of lack of safety and danger and all the things that's there, and you didn't miss out on things, but you can make up for that now. And the way of receiving love is to start sending it out. And you don't feel like sending it out because of how you feel. But once somebody gets that emotion wrestled off you, and it's no longer attached to that sensation, so you can think about this. I'm just going to tell a story, because I do tell stories that help people get better. I had a young lad who came to see me, who he was 18. I'm 70, so that's a young lad. And the parents phoned up and said, could you help? We're going abroad. We're leaving our son in this country. He wants to stay here because he's raised here. But and they were quite wealthy, and they were going to retire abroad. And he wouldn't go with them. But they said, we adopted him when he was 2, and he was abused, and he had cigarettes stamped out on him and all sorts of things. And so they bring him along to see me, and it came from a long way away. And so I've got this young lad in front of me. Now, if he was abused when he's 2, there's no good me taking him back to how he felt about when he was 2. So my whole thing was, okay, something bad happened when you were 2, yeah, up until you were 2, and that is horrendous. Now, do you want your old mother back? do you want to go back to the family that raised you? And he went, no. I said, okay. So you've got two options now. You can spend the rest of your life going around saying, oh, it was terrible. Until I was 2, I was abused. I had cigarettes stuck down me. It was awful. Or you could say, when I was 2, these wonderful people adopted me and my brother. And they're wealthy. And I got raised in this wonderful atmosphere of love and kindness. And I'd never gone short of anything. When I was 2, I won the lottery. So you choose now whether you go forward in your life as this shy sort of like, oh, terrible thing happened to me, or you go forward saying, I won the lottery when I was 2. And that changed it because you just reframed it in a different way. Terrible things happen to you. I can't make up for that. I can't do anything about that. Yeah. But if you think back to it and go, oh, I escaped. Oh, that's really good. Yeah. So we all go through things. I was listening to a watching thing about Normal Wisdom's life story yesterday. And it was a famous comedian many years ago. And I actually put his central heating in when I was 20 and I met him. And he had such a tale of abandonment, and he was raised in a house in Wales, and he walked all the way to London when he was about 16 to escape. It took him 4 days of hiding under hedges and that. And this guy went on to be a multimillionaire and entertain millions of people. Because what happens to us does mold us, and we just need that fight to say, I'm not going to let this take over my life. Yeah. If you have the strength, it's for you now to take back control of your life, because your emotions and your pain and everything else are literally messages given to you, but we don't bury them. So at some point, you're going to have to let all this energy out, and frustration and anger and tears, and and it's going to be an emotional few days for you. But once you let go of that to say, but that's not where I am anymore, that's not how I want to be anymore. And this is what I do with people, is I help them take back control again. And it doesn't feel like you're in control. If you're in a lot of pain, you don't feel like you're in control. If you're in a terrible emotion or a depression, it doesn't feel like you're in control. But you have to have the strength to say, I am stronger than this. Yeah, I'm not having this anymore. Yeah. And good luck to you, and thank you for sharing that message with us. But,
yes.
There is hope for you, absolutely.
Yes, thank you. And I just want to ask one more question, because we mentioned the people that the pain goes away, very quickly. But there's reduction. The people that find reduction, do you then invite them to come back, or is it really that kind of conversation like I had, trusting the brain that it releases it when it's the right time?
This is the whole thing. I'm training people to sort themselves out. So this isn't a great business model. A good business model is, I need to see you 10 times, X amount per time. I don't want that for people. I want them to be free of whatever problem they've got as quickly as possible, but to understand themselves, to understand why they've done it. Now, my big thing has always been that some people want to work on people who are 8 out of 10 with their, I've got an 8 out of 10 life, get me to a 10. I don't want to work with those people. I think anybody who's an 8 out of 10 can do a bit of research and get there themselves. I work with people who are 0s or 2s, and I get them to an 8. And then they can sort themselves out. And if I get somebody out of pain, then they can deal with the issues that trap them in it, and their exercise regime and their diet and all the other things that they might want to change now to keep healthy. So for me, it's get them out of this, break the cycle of I'm trapped in this. So I'm almost letting them out of jail, and then saying, you're free now, do what you like. I don't want to direct that. I don't want to direct where they do and what they focus on or not, because they'll find the right thing to do, and they'll do it. Yeah. But once they know how they got locked up in the first place, they're not going near that jail again. Yeah. And that's my thing. So there's people I've seen many, many years later who still don't believe it could work, even though it's worked for the last 7 years.
Yeah.
So it's not a belief system. It literally is, once your brain's in the right space and you cancel out this calculation that didn't need to carry on running. Yeah. And that's no difference whether it's, emotional pain or physical pain. It's just the same thing. But you do need help to do it because you're locked in the idea. And you get locked in the idea, it can't go, it won't work for me and all that. And in fact, the 82-year-old woman this week, we got to the end of the process and she said, I've still got pain. And I said, okay, there's one thing I know, that you've held a thought in your head. What was the thought in your head just before you came back into the room? And she said, well, I thought this isn't going to work. And I said, yes. And that's a command to the brain. So we did all this work together about positivity and outcomes and all that. And whilst your brain's going, I'll get rid of this for you, you're going, no, this isn't going to work. This isn't going to work. And it goes, well, if you don't want it to work, I'll make sure it doesn't work. And we just had 10 minutes talking about positives and negatives and the effect on you. And then I said, let's go for it again. And then the pain went. Yeah. So it is really quite a simple idea behind it. I'm not saying it's too simple to do, but there's a simple idea there. And it is really that your thoughts and beliefs and experiences all amount to the process. And once we start changing those thought processes, and it's not by repetition and all this, and it really annoys me when people do that. There's a lot of really guru type people out there who say, I help people, and they give you one example of somebody got better after 2 years. And I'm like, oh God, you've got one example. And then you hear them interviewed again, and they've just got the same example of somebody who got better after 2 years. I'd give up if that's all. I have an hour and a half with somebody, and most of the time they get better. Not the same for emotional stuff because I need longer. But you can resolve it, but you have to have the mindset that is open to it. And you can't keep thinking, oh, it can't work, or it's not going to work for me, or this won't happen, or I've had it such a long time, and it's during a conversation with somebody that I find out all these negatives and I help them flip them round. And it's only then that we can get to the end. If there's still negatives that I know about, I don't go to the end part of the process because I've got to get rid of all these negatives that hold you back from it. Yeah. And it's only our deepest thoughts. And people say, but it's such a strong feeling. And I go, yeah, but you're in charge of it. You're in charge of it. You don't feel, I know it doesn't feel like that, but it is. It absolutely is. Yeah.
Let me just read a comment from that person, Facebook user. So he or she says, thank you. I do agree with all you have said. It's the sadness that I feel, which is overwhelming, and that comes from my childhood. But I do have much to be thankful for in my life, and that's what I need to focus on.
Thanks for the feedback. Just understand that sadness can go, though. Yeah. Depression is a lack of feelings. It's not a sadness. And we can feel sad, and like I felt sad for Norman Wisdom, even though, he was a multimillionaire in the end, and I'd spoken to him. But I recognized something I had in me, which was I laughed and joked about things because then things didn't hurt me. I didn't have to accept them in a serious way. Mm. So if we start doing more things that bring joy into our life, and the easiest way to get joy is to give it away. If we share it out there, we get it back from lots of different directions. And this is why it's all called unconditional love, because it isn't, oh, I'm going to tell you I love you if you say you love me. It's literally, I have love for everybody on the planet. Now, there's some people I don't like what they do, But I recognize that 99.999% of people are doing the best they can from their experiences and their perception of them and everything else. And what happened to you in the past is still your perception of what happened. Yeah. And that's why it attaches feelings to it and that. But if you look back at it as a dispassionate observer, you know, like I had a little tear for normal wisdom when I heard this sort of journey and sleeping on the hedges and that. We can have that passion for other people and compassion and have this, because when we do it, it's sort of like, I wouldn't like to have done that myself. So we feel for you. But you've got to move away from that and say, it happened. I've grieved for it for long enough. You know, I've had the rest of my life with this sadness that I don't want. So let me do something about it now. Yeah. So please get some help. This isn't easy on your own to do. Yeah. You can do the finishing off bits on your own, but get somebody to get that horrible sensation away from you. And when you're free of it, then you can experiment and you can do things, and life will get better. I promise you. My life is so awesome now. I didn't realize I had problems when I went into training. And when we got to having to practice on each other, because usually you practice in threes, one as an observer, you know, one's the client and one's the therapist. And when it was my turn to be the client, I always went, oh, but I don't have any problems. I did. I just didn't realize it. I'd covered it up with this wonderful sense of humor. And it's only as I've been working on other people now that they come in with problems, and I recognize I've had the same problems. But I didn't know I had, because I'd always managed to cover it up with a sense of humor. And as you work on other people, you get better yourself, because you can't tell them the solution to things that are universal solutions without them affecting you as well. So I do understand myself a lot better now, and why I've done things in the past and why I've been the way I am. And very fortunately, I don't, there's nothing there to regret or whatever. I've got to where I am now at this time because I have this knowledge. But before that, I didn't have it. Yeah.
Yes. Stephen, this has been fascinating, and I think we could talk for hours and hours, but this is probably a really good place to pause. Yep. So the person saying, yes, thank you for your advice, and yes, I am working with someone.
Good. Let us know. Let us know, and write to me personally if you want when you get sorted. I'd love to hear from
you. So yes, your details and all your information will be shared with everyone underneath this chat when it goes live. It is already live in the group. It's going to go live in all the other platforms. Stephen, thank you so much for being here today, for your wonderful method. I'm excited to have trained with you and to bring it forward to the world as well. Thank you so much.
And thank you for this opportunity to get the message out there. Thank you.
Thank you.